today about the body, mind, and soul, the Jewish view of healing. So obviously, in the short 7 hours I've been given to give this over, it would be very, very difficult to give over such a broad topic. But the truth is I only have around 45 minutes to an hour, so that makes it even more difficult. So the best I can do is to try to give some cogent ideas, some ideas for everyone to take with them to help us integrate body, mind, and soul. So first of all, I don't need to tell you that until, I'm just guessing, 10, 15, 20 years ago, Western medicine focused almost exclusively on dealing with symptoms. And there was virtually no recognition of any spiritual, physical connection in health. It was considered New Age, it was considered mystical, or beyond the pale of Western conventional medicine. But everyone knows that in the last 20, I'm just guessing, 20 years, 25 years, that has changed dramatically. Dramatically. I could just even tell you from the Israel medical system, where chiropractic, homeopathy, different energy type of healing, was acupuncture, was considered, was not covered by any of the systems here. Now it's completely different. Every system accepts, which means that they pay for it. So obviously they have to believe that there's something to it. So this pretty much everyone knows. What we want to get to is, what is the Torah view of healing and medicine, and especially the spiritual, physical, psyche, emotional connection to healing. So we're going to start where the Torah starts. And what I'm going to say actually is a very simple understanding, but I only heard it myself about a year ago, and it was such a chiddush, such a novel idea. The Torah begins, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So the word bara, which is also in the word Bereshit, in other words, the first 3 letters of Bereshit is also bara, created. But bara is the same root for briut, for health. So Rav Ginsburg says, he translates it not instead of any other translation that we may have, but in addition is, in the beginning, God began to heal the heavens and the earth. This is like, whoa. This is really an awesome understanding. To understand that, yeah, there's a bunch of chairs you can bring out. To understand this, we really are in the right place in Sfat, because the Arizal, as everyone knows, gave over a mystical cosmology, which is uncannily similar and parallel to modern physics and cosmology. That is a whole other subject, which is actually for Sunday night at Beirav, the unity of secular knowledge, science and the arts, and Torah wisdom.
Will you cover dark energy?
It might. There's a lot to cover again in an hour, but it might be in there. If you'll ask about it, it will be there. Yes. So the Ari explains that when God wanted to create the world, since there was nothing but the infinite light of God, so God had to contract, as it were, his infinite being to leave space for a physical and actually spiritual worlds as well. And then God shone his light into that, what's called a chalala panui, into that vacuum, and from that all the worlds are created. But we learned that in the beginning, when this light was flowing into creation, the initial vessels shattered. They were not mature enough to hold the light. And that was called Shvira Tekelim. Most of you, I'm sure, are very aware of this. Shvira Tekelim, the breaking of the vessels. And that this world, that world was called Olam HaTohu. And the Ari called this world Olam HaTikun. Olam HaTikun, the world of fixing. So this explains why Rav Ginsburg says, in the beginning, God began to heal. What was there to heal? The previous world that had shattered. So this puts a whole different light on, first of all, understanding the creation, but translated into our own lives, as it were, this world needs healing. The nature, the existential nature of this world is that it begins from a place that needs healing. For those of you who were here the other night, many of you were, we talked about the cycle of exile and redemption. And we learned that the same word for exile, gola, is the same root for geula, for redemption. And we learned that the healing or the salvation or the redemption comes actually from the exile itself. I can't go back over that, but that's what we were learning. We were learning that the salvation actually is seated in the exile itself. So is seated, is in the exile itself. So therefore, to translate this into healing, again, I'm quoting Rav Ginsburg. Many of the things I'm talking about comes from his book, Body, Mind, and Soul, by Rav Ginsburg. An excellent, excellent book in English. It is an amazing, amazing, amazing book. This is just a few snippets. But he explains that the word in Hebrew for to be sick is choleh, or to have a disease is a machala. So the root, the two-letter, what's called the two-letter gate, every word has a three-letter root. Of the three, there are two letters that are the primary letters. So the primary letters of being sick are chet and lamed. So choleh, machala, chalash, to be weak is chalash, the same root. And yet, the same root is Eshet Chayil. What is a soldier called in modern Hebrew? A Chayal. It means to be strong, to have valor. So here you have an example, just like we learned about exile and redemption, two absolute opposite concepts can have the same root. This occurs in Hebrew many, many, many times, and is such a deep understanding of Torah and the Hebrew language. Is to have the same root, have opposite meanings.
The hachlim is to recover is the same root according
to what?
The hachlim, to recover.
The hachlim, very good. Exactly. To become healthy again also comes from the same root. So what can we learn from this? And this is absolutely crucial for one of the points that we want to get across, is that within the symptoms or the signs of a sickness will be the hints of the healing. Now, this is not just a spiritual concept, This is the basis of homeopathy and of all vaccinations. All vaccinations take a small part of a certain disease and they inoculate a person with the right dose that, God willing, the person will not get sick or have any bad after effects, but it will inoculate them and protect them for their whole life against this disease. It's an incredible concept, but we're seeing it in the Hebrew words themselves. That to be choleh, from that you can become chayav, you can become strong. And so we see this. It was just a week or two ago where we had the whole story of the snakes that were biting us in the desert. And God said, take a snake and put it on a staff, which then became the symbol of the American Medical Association. And if you look at it, you'll be healed. Moshe, Rashi explains, out of his own dot, decide to make it a copper snake. Why? Because copper, the word for copper in Hebrew is lechoshet, which is the same root as nachash, snake. So that was like the secret of homeopathy was there. It says in the Gemara, the way God heals is not the way that human beings heal. Human beings usually heal through opposites. And that was how all Western medicine was based, on opposites. But the Talmud says, but God heals through likes. So in other words, this idea of vaccinations and homeopathy and using more natural ways of healing is, in a sense, a divine way of healing that in no way minimizes the great advances of conventional medicine. There are some wonderful, wonderful natural healers, but I'm just giving my opinion and also Rob Ginsburg's opinion. One should never totally negate conventional medicine. Conventional medicine has saved hundreds of millions of lives in the last century. On the other hand, there's a part of conventional medicine that does not have its finger on the pulse. Remember that phrase, because at the end we're going to develop this idea of the finger on the pulse in a very, very fascinating way. So also in Hebrew, a corpse, in other words, if someone becomes sick enough, they become a corpse. What's the word for corpse in Hebrew? A halal. Same root, halal. When sickness goes too far, it becomes a halal. So this is the first point that we are making, is that the roots of healing are in the sickness. And I'm just going to give a few examples. When we get a fever, it's not pleasant. Especially a little baby gets a fever, parents get very worried. When adults start getting high fevers, it's a warning sign. But it's the body, it's the best thing that the body could do for us. It's sending us a message saying there's something really wrong here. It needs to be treated. Let's say there was no fever, and a person would just get sicker and say had no sign, just not feeling good. But this happens a lot of times, whether it's a headache, whether it's a warning sign before a heart attack comes. They're warning signs. They're warning signs before a stroke comes. In other words, the body is telling us there is something wrong here. So the idea is, if we know that the fixing or the healing is wedged in the sickness, then we'll take these warning signs very seriously. When a person gets under the weather, it's a sign, is like, maybe I'm working too hard, maybe I'm not sleeping well, maybe I'm not eating well, maybe I'm not exercising well, maybe I stopped taking a certain medication that I was supposed to. All of these are things that we experience all the time, but if we keep them in mind, then we understand it's a different way to look at sickness. It's a different way, because it's telling us the sickness is there, and in many cases, not all cases, that goes without saying, it can be a sign to help you heal yourself. Now, obviously, I should have said this in the beginning. Obviously, what I'm talking about is in very big generalities, because once you start dealing with genetic diseases that come through genetics, people who are born with certain limitations, it fits in this also, but it's almost a different subject how to deal with that.
Excuse me.
So I'm dealing more with the everyday, more manageable kind of challenges that we have. So we want to see what does the Torah have to say about healing. So there are 1.5 parshas in the Torah that are almost exclusively dealing with this subject, and that's Tazria and Metzora. And even though only one disease is mentioned, like almost everything in the Torah, it becomes archetypal for what the Torah wants to teach us about healing. And the main thing that it's teaching us is, that we know from tradition, is that this particular illness called Sara'at, that we translate as leprosy, we're told over and over and over again, the reasons for it were spiritual. We're told in all over the place that it was caused by spiritual reasons. Not that certain sicknesses are not caused by physical factors, but the Torah wanted to teach us that in general, you cannot separate a person's spiritual state, emotional state, or lifestyle from their health situation. And that's why you're taken to a Kohen. The Torah talks about healing. It gives a doctor permission to heal. In the Talmud, there are many, many discussions about very, very practical healing. One of the greatest doctors, really of all time, in the influence that he had was Maimonides, was Rambam. Even though we might look back and say, oh, we're so much beyond that, but we're talking about in the context of when he was teaching 1,000 years ago, the Rambam was extremely advanced in his understanding of how to be healthy. So this is the main idea we can take away from Tazria Metzora. That's why you go to a Kohen. The Kohen is the one that you go to. And there's a line in there that the Slonomer Rebbe explains. It says that the Kohen sees that the skin ailment is deeper than the skin. Amok mina or. Deeper than the skin. So the Slonomer Rebbe explains that that's exactly what the Torah is trying to teach, is that in a sense all physical ailments are connected to something that is deeper than skin level, deeper than the superficial symptoms that we're seeing. And just to go a little bit deeper is that because it is a mystery, and it is sometimes very complex for our thinking why certain people are born with certain health challenges. For this, in most cases, we depend on Gilgul, on reincarnation. But the difference is, and I'm going to make a very, very important point here, is that we believe everything has a reason, and we believe everything has a proper cheshbon. The only thing is we don't know what it is. And we should never, ever play God when trying to figure out when someone else's challenges in any realm. But here we're just talking about health, right? It's not in our purview whatsoever to make any personal judgments about why a certain person maybe is suffering from a certain thing. Our job is to have compassion. And you'll see how connected this is, because the word for healing in Hebrew is refuah. The three letters, root letters, are Resh, Pei, Aleph. If you just switch the letters around, it becomes Tiferet. It's the root of Tiferet, of harmony, of holism. And the inner dimension of Tiferet, as taught by Rav Ginsburg, is compassion. Is compassion. So our job is, including with ourselves, if anyone is suffering or challenged, not just health-wise, but anyway, God's job is to figure out why and how and where and what the cheshbon is. Ours is to help and to have compassion. That is the inner light of refuah, of Tiferet. And that's why all of medicine is based on the incentive to help, to heal, to save lives, This is a very, very deep point in the Hebrew letters themselves. Again, refuah is the same root as Tiferet. Now, where does Tiferet sit in the Sfirot? Right in the middle, between above and below and right and left. Tiferet is right in the middle. And this is the basic philosophy of Rambam with healing. It's called the middle way, the middle road. And every natural doctor, healer, base one way or another their whole practice and advice that they give people is how to balance all of the different foods and influences in our life to have the proper balance. Much of Eastern healing is based on the same idea of finding the proper balance in the body, and different methods, whether it's acupuncture or herbs or whatever it is, or pressure points, whatever it is to realign, or chiropractic is to realign so that it's in balance, it's in harmony.
I think when you were
Yes.
talking about the snakes, there's also the same thing with the words. You have srifa, fire, but you also have srafim. And so in looking to get that balance between the two,
Yes,
it seems that
they were
same concept.
burning snakes. They were burning snakes. And truthfully, the healing was that their prayer had to be also like with fire, with passion.
Please repeat the question.
the question was that the snakes that we talked about that were biting the people, they're described as burning snakes. Srefa. But also the healing was, remember, they had to look at the snake and towards God, and they had to pray. Well, if they were like, Hashem, please heal me, I don't think it would have worked. It would have had to be like, Bona Sha'aylam, have to be with fire. Had to be with fire. So that is the healing within. Okay, now I'm thinking of this because yesterday we went right outside of Tzfat is a little double cave, and it's called the place of the Idra. Idra. This is one of the deepest, complex parts of the Zohar, called the Idra Rabbah. Idra is the great gathering. Rabbi Shimon gathered 9 of his Talmidim and gave over secrets that he had never given over before. The amazing thing is, when you read the Idra, and I'll just tell you, without a teacher, you cannot understand even a word of what's going on here. But the point I'm trying to make is, when you look at the Idra, it's a very, very thick part of the Zohar. He's describing the human eye, the nose, the ear, the forehead, and the brain. And it goes to all the different parts of the body. When you look at the whole Zohar in general, it actually rarely mentions the word chesed. What does it say? The right arm. It rarely mentions Gevura by name. What is it? The left arm. When it wants to talk about Tiferet, it talks about the heart. When it wants to talk about Chochmah, Bina, V'dat, it talks about the head. So this is very, very important. This idea, we might have heard about it from the East, where the body is a temple. This idea where the body is a temple. But when we look in our mystical tradition, it says it also from thousands of years ago. But all the way back to Bereshit, man was created b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God. And we know that that doesn't mean a physical image. We know that. Nonetheless, in our mystical tradition, it makes a very strong point that the human body is hinting, is an illusion, is a gateway into understanding God. So it can be a slippery slope, because absolutely we do not believe that the human body reflects anything of a physical body of God. Absolutely, positively not. And yet, we have all of this symbolic imagery of the body to teach us that the purpose of putting a soul in the body was that there should be a unity between soul and body. That's why we go to great lengths when someone passes away to give them, we treat the body with such incredible respect. I learned a lot from my wife, who was on the Chevra Kadisha in Denver. The incredible honor that is given to it. If the soul is the ego, the soul is gone. Why? And I'm not making any judgments whatsoever, but why don't we believe in cremation? Why don't we believe in cremation? And again, I'm making no moral judgments whatsoever. No, I'm not. I'm asking why we don't. It's not making a moral judgment.
It's one of the 4 forms of burning. It's one of the 4 forms of execution.
I know, but still the body will be there at the end.
We
So I'm
tend to
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. In other words, the point is, our bodies are also holy. It's not just that the body is a container for the soul, and the soul leaves. The soul is important, and even during life, the body isn't that important. It's the soul that is the ikar. That's why going back to Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, we could read in the beginning, God began to heal by teaching us the intrinsic unity between heaven and earth, between soul and body. And that's why one of the 613 mitzvahs is you have to guard, it says guard your soul very much. The word in Hebrew is nefesh, and it's understood, it means your body. That's the pshat of that mitzvah, even though you could say, well, nefesh means soul. But we're talking about the level of soul that's in the blood. That's the whole idea of not eating blood, is we're told that the soul is in the blood. The blood is what makes the body happen. It's life force. Remember, Adam, Aleph is the divine soul, and the Dam means blood. Adam, soul and body.
So is it acceptable to donate blood?
Absolutely, absolutely. She asked, is it permissible to donate blood? It's a huge mitzvah, huge mitzvah. And even in our day, even though it wasn't really practiced because there was no practical reason, but today it is permitted to donate organs if it will save other people's lives. And for many, many years, it just wasn't practical because medicine wasn't on the level that it could take different organs and actually save other people's lives. Now they can, and it's also, according to most rabbis, it's a mitzvah to actually donate organs if you can. If you can. Don't have to, but if you can. Okay. So now I just want to connect, going back to Tazria, to the idea of lifestyle. Because what the Torah was teaching is that there are spiritual reasons connected to physical diseases. In our day, even in conventional medicine, this is now accepted that almost the majority of modern ailments, the biggies, are caused in great measure by our lifestyle. Stress, they now know, is a major factor in a list of health problems this long. Stress, not eating properly, not exercising. We know the problems of dirty water. There are, as we speak, people dying all over the world because they do not have clean water. They do not have clean water, and there are people dying as we speak all over the world. We're aware also, we lived in Denver, actually here, also when there is a very, very bad sharav, they tell people who have lung diseases not to go out of their house. But that's sand from the desert, but we know in cities all over the world that it's not from sand from the desert. It's our created pollution that is affecting us. And with all of the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful advances in technology, we also know with radiation, like everywhere you move now, there is things going on in the air. It all affects us. It all affects us. So, especially though our lifestyle, it's, and this is what the Rambam taught 1,000 years ago. This is what it means to guard your soul very much. And this is what Tazria is teaching, is you have to have a balanced lifestyle. You have to. You have to make time to eat good, to breathe good, meditation, exercise, going out to nature, music, eating at the Element Cafe. Mazel tov. Okay. And the biggie is stress. The biggie is stress. And I think everyone is challenged with that, how to deal with stress. Because they know now very well, through lots of tests and wires and machines, what happens to every part of our body, our whole immune system, our whole nervous system, our whole endocrinology when stressed. It's just, it's like, I'm going to say it, it's literally a killer. It's literally a killer. And because of stress, people smoke, people eat fast food, people don't get enough sleep, people work too hard, etc., etc. So we have to find the right balance. And we're told we're supposed to work 6 days a week. It's good to work, but we have to learn to manage stress. Okay? So now we really only have time for one more idea. It's a very, very fascinating idea. And it originates here in Sfat with the Ari. So the Ari, we know this from Rabbi Chaim Vital, what I'm about to say, but at the end he said, but I didn't learn from the Ari how to do it. He just learned that the Ari said that there is such a system, and we assume that the Ari could do it. But Rabbi Chaim Vital said, but I wasn't privileged to learn how the Rebbe did it. So the Ari taught there are 10 types of pulses. 10 types of pulses. From what I understand, in Chinese medicine, they identify, I believe it's 24 types of pulses, give or take a couple. In other words, it's not a unique idea, but the Ari said that there are 10 types of pulses. Now, if you look at the Hebrew vowels, all of the vowels, with a touch of imagination, are lines and dots. Like a patach is a line. You have the chirik is a point. A kometz is a line with a dot under it. All of the vowels are lines and dots. So the Ari taught that he knew how to put his finger on someone's pulse, and it's like Morse code. That's in the beginning. Morse code was lines and dots. That's how we sent messages. So the Ari, by putting his finger, he could tell which vowel was running through this person. In other words, what was the main pulse of this person? Each of the vowels, there are 9 vowels. Each of the 9 vowels is connected to a sphera. Malchut is considered like Malchut is. Malchut has nothing of itself. It just contains, it receives everything else. So Malchut is all the vowels together. And so from the vowel he could tell which sphera, and sometimes if he put his like sphera to Omer, he could feel.
There's a pulse in the thumb. So you test the pulse with it.
Okay.
As a connector.
So maybe there was a combination. This person is Tiferet Sheba Chachma. And just like, let's say, Sfirat Omer, each day of the Omer, there's a spiritual meditation for the day. Obviously, you have to know a little bit about the Sfirot. But when it's Tiferet Sheba Chesed, and you know what Tiferet and Chesed is in the whole week of Chesed, then you have an idea what to be thinking about. So the Ari could tell on a spiritual level what that person needed, what the person needed. So this is an amazing idea. But then Rabbi Chaim Vital said, but I wasn't privileged to learn how to actually do it. But Rabbi, I don't see a question. Yes. Yeah, let me finish the thought. So this is very, very, very connected to some of Rabbi Nachman's teachings. Rabbi Nachman took these teachings and he connected these 10 pulses to the 10 different languages of song. There's 10 in the Tehillim, in Psalms, there are 10 different languages as explained expressions, as explained in the Talmud. There are 10 different ones. Rabbi Nachman, based on this, he collated the Tikkun HaKlali, which are 10 Psalms. Why? Because Rabbi Nachman taught in parallel to everything that we're teaching, he taught the greatest source of sickness is depression. That's what Rabbi Nachman taught. The greatest source of depression, of illness, is depression. And everyone experiences depression at one point or another. Some people have bouts of depression, and some people have real ongoing challenges with depression. But I don't think there's anyone who doesn't experience depression at some point or another. And so we all know when we get into that depressed state, that's a recipe for not being healthy, because you become frozen emotionally.
You give up hope.
Yeah, and you stop caring, and you give up hope. And so Rabbi Nachman taught even beforehand that the way I'm talking about lifestyle, Rabbi Nachman talked about depression. That was the big general idea that will lead to sickness. And so what did he teach was the greatest cure? Joy. Throughout Rabbi Nachman, he talks about the greatest antidote to depression and sickness and unbalance is through joy. And so these 10 songs, because what is music? Music is vibration and a beat, right? There's a beat, there's a harmony, there's a pulse to music. And so music and joy and the 10 Tehillim of Tikkun Klali are all connected, and this is all connected to the original teaching from the Ari of the 10 different pulses and their connection to, again, being signs for healing. So we're going to wrap this up together. We'll take questions, we'll take comments. I just want to mention, if anyone's interested, our books here, greatly discounted and free CD with every book. We're now entering into the 3 weeks. And we talked about this at length the other night, that until I understood the 3 weeks a little bit more, I used to get very depressed during the 3 weeks, because I thought that was kind of like the spiritual avoda. was to be depressed. It took me many years to understand that's not what we're supposed to do. We learned about this the other night. The idea of deep introspection about ourselves, about Am Yisrael, about the state of the world, what we call existential worry about the state of the world and wanting to do something about it. Someone mentioned to me that I could have emphasized even more than I did the other night that having compassion on others and feeling existential worry, by definition, in a Jewish context, means to take action, to try to do something to alleviate what's bothering you about the world. So, in a sense, galut is an unhealthy state. And that's why we always talk about the Shekhinah in exile is in a state of sickness. And that's why in the Talmud, Talmud and Yeshayahu and Isaiah describes the Mashiach as being someone who is acquainted with illness, who is actually painfully ill and carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. The Gemara compares the Mashiach as one who has leprosy, tzara'at, and sitting in the gates of Rome with tzara'at, waiting to reveal himself. So a state of galut, of exile in general, is a state of, it's an unhealthy state. Bezrat Hashem, here we're sitting in the holy city of Tzfat, in the holy restaurant or cafe, the Elements Cafe, and don't drop anything with them. But Bezrat Hashem, you know who talked about this a lot? Rav Kook. Rav Kook taught at length that as we're coming back to Eretz Yisrael, we're being healed. It's a process of healing ourselves from the unnatural state of exile. We're not calling it a sickness, but just an unnatural state. So here we are in Eretz Yisrael. We have the great merit to be in Eretz Yisrael. We have even the greater merit to be seeing the beginning of the final Geula. There's no doubt. No one knows if it's tomorrow or next week or next month or next year, or I don't want to say more than that. No one knows, but we are definitely in a redemptive process now, which means we and the whole world are in the process of becoming healed. So I just want to give us all a blessing that we really experience total healing for ourselves, physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, and that from this holy place of Eretz Yisrael, that kind of vibration will spread to the whole world. That kind of balance between heaven and earth, physical and spiritual, soul and body, will come together and will emanate healing energy all over the planet.
Amen.